Every episode we do here on Debt Free in 30 in some way, shape, or form is about managing debt payments. However, sometimes we drill down deep and focus on ways to pay down overwhelming debt. It can be a claustrophobic place to be, and exploring options can be very overwhelming. That's why we do this show and why we run a business on helping individuals get out of debt. So today, please enjoy some of our best tips on getting debt under control.
This is Debt Free in 30. Here's your host, Doug Hoyes.
Today we're going to discuss emergency funds versus debt, and people who are watching on the YouTube will see that I have like one tiny card with basically nothing written on it. So we are going to, and you have nothing as well. So we are going to wing it, which I think is entirely appropriate because this is a discussion we have with people all the time. Why are we having this discussion about money being tight?
Because, Doug, money is super tight.
Money is tight. Exactly. Now, so what do you do when you find yourself in that position where you got too much debt? So since this show is called Debt Free in 30, I thought, hey, why don't we talk about the practical ways to tackle it? So I guess the first question is to take a step back and say, okay, how did I get into this situation?
Right. How did this happen?
How did this happen? So what are the obvious reasons why people get into debt problems?
Well, I mean, the most obvious one is that you haven't got a sufficient income. And so that either means you're not earning enough, or perhaps you've lost your job, or for some reason, like the inflation we're experiencing these days, your costs have got out of line and your income can't change overnight.
And I think we've been saying this for years, and that is
since 1999.
Since
anybody's
1999.
asking.
Yeah, so what are we in, like year 25 now of Hoyes Michaelis?
Hey, I got to speak louder. I can't hear you anymore.
We started when we were 6, so
That's
we're
exactly
not
right.
as old as we look here. The credit card company's fine with me.
They're happy.
They're happy.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, they're very happy.
You're paying a lot of interest.
You're paying a lot of interest, so they love it. But okay, are there some alternatives to that? What can you do instead of that? How do you try to avoid the minimum payment trap?
I mean, first, let's tackle the minimum payment question. Like, yes, they're happy, but how long can you keep that up? Like, that's the biggest problem. A lot of my clients who come and see me, they're like, I've been doing this for 8 years. I'm like, so you're living paycheck to paycheck for 8 years, juggling from one credit to another to make sure you make the minimum payment. Now, that's a problem because, again, something's going to happen in life and throw you a curveball. And how are you going to pay for that?
Well, and if you are doing what you just described, I'm using a cash advance from here to pay there.
Right.
My overall debt levels are going up.
Exactly. Although you're keeping the creditors quite happy for the moment, there will be a time where the minimum payments far exceed what you're able to now pay with your income. So we emphasize a lot as licensed insolvency trustees. We emphasize a lot on budgeting, our favorite word, income and expenses. We do have to look at income. And as you mentioned, we want to keep that high and the expenses low. Now, I know it's hard with expenses these days because grocery bills. I don't know about you, Doug, but my grocery bills went from $400 to $800 easily in the past year.
Obviously, I want to pay down my debt, but I'm also told by all the financial gurus that you got to have an emergency fund. And I think you and I both absolutely agree that you have to have an emergency fund. There's no doubt about that. You know, we fully agree with that opinion. So and an emergency fund, I think, again, everybody understands what an emergency fund is. If I have an emergency, there's money there.
Right.
And so an emergency is I got a flat tire. I have to buy a new tire. I have to repair my tire. Okay, well, I need to have the money to do that. Off the top of your head, what are the other things that I would obviously be using my emergency fund for?
Right. I just say it is great to identify what your emergency is, because obviously not everyone has a car and not everyone has a dog. But if your dog got sick and had to go to the vet, that's also unplanned emergency. So an emergency is something that's unplanned, unforeseen, that impacts your life, basically.
Here's a guy. He's got 4 credit cards.
Mm-hmm.
They total $20,000. in total.
Yeah.
The interest rate, 19.9%, let's call it 20%.
So they're not horrible cards.
No, they're your typical basic Bob, regular kind of credit card. So I guess if you do the math, that would be $333 a month in interest. If you have to make a 2% payment each month towards principal, then that'd be around, $700-800 a month, whatever that is that he's got to pay.
Right.
So a lot of credit cards, it's $15 minimum or 2% of the outstanding balance. So if you were just paying the minimum, according to the calculator I looked at, 91 years to pay it off.
Right. Isn't that what they added to credit card bills about 4 years ago? And nobody
Yeah.
reads that part now because it just scares them.
Yeah. And we always look at it when we're meeting with someone and say, you see how it says 91 years?
Right. You'll be dead.
So I will put a link in the show notes to the Government of Canada credit card payment calculator so you can punch in the numbers and verify that what I'm saying is correct. What was the key takeaway from that study?
Well, our client's credit card debt was up 26% over the year before. That's the biggest increase we've ever seen for anything.
Biggest increase ever, which is why we're talking about credit cards today. So in the Canadian population last year, credit card balances were up 7%.
Which is still a huge number.
Which is a huge number. But for our clients, it was up 26%. And that's because our clients are the leading indicator.
That's right.
It's like if I want to know what the weather's going to be in Toronto, well, I look to see what's happening in Kitchener because 2 hours later it's going to get there. That's what's happening with our clients. They're getting into trouble. They're the first people to get into trouble.
Right.
Because they're the ones who've lost their job, gone through a divorce, illness, whatever it is. You use credit cards to survive. Boom.
That's right. The underlying issue always has to be if you're spending money faster than you're making it, well, obviously you need to find a way to either make more money or reduce your spending. And I guess that would be the second reason. Your spending's out of control for some reason.
Yeah. And they're, and I think the perception, if you talk to someone on the street is, oh, well, if someone's gone bankrupt, it's because they had a, huge spending problem. They're impulsive. They've got a gambling problem, right? All those sorts of things.
Basically, they're blaming the person who's gotten into bankruptcy.
Right. And, certainly there are people who fit that bill exactly, but that would be the distinct minority, I think, of the people that we deal with.
Yeah, there's lots of room to share the blame. I put the blame more on the fact that you can get 27 credit cards if you apply for them. Mm-hmm. And so, there's somebody else is at fault here, not just you for applying for them.
Yeah, and we did a show back in December about credit cards and, all the new ways you can now pay with installments and all the new ways to do it. So it's certainly an issue. I'm tight on cash this month. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, the logical thing to do is, well, I'm just going to put it on credit. And okay, we've all had to do that. I understand. Why is that something you want to avoid, if at all possible?
Well, Doug, it's because it's not just one time. Because if it is, then great. Like, yes, you can have an emergency and you should put it on credit if you don't have the money readily available. Okay. But the thing is, we fall into a vicious cycle. It's not just one time. You're going to need gas. You're going to need groceries for your kids. You're going to need, tire change, or your pet falls ill. So it's like the vicious cycle. It's not just one time. That's the problem.
Give me off the top of your head a reason why I'm wrong, and really the emergency fund is something you should prioritize before paying down debt.
I think it's really important to have that emergency fund there, because it's all well and good to say, well, I have room on my credit card, I will pay it down. But how many people do we meet on a daily basis that have had that exact same plan and then end up in huge financial stress that they can never get out from underneath unless they have help? So there's a danger in that thinking, because then you're like, okay, well, I'll just put this on and I can pay it off. Yeah, but you're paying like 20% interest on it. It's not as easy. Like your money, it's not like you owe 1,000 and you're going to pay 1,000 and you're paid off. That's not how that works.
Now, and we're going to come back to that because I think that's kind of the gist of the argument. But you have been on this podcast many times before, and a lot of the time you talk about the psychological aspect of life. Okay, so step number one, get a piece of paper, a spreadsheet, an app on your phone, whatever you want to do. Here's everybody I owe money to. Here's how much it is. Here's what the interest rate is. And here's what the minimum payment is. how long is it going to take me to pay it off? It becomes really obvious.
And just as a reminder, folks, if you've already started to get behind on stuff, you might actually have to put things like your utilities on this list. So if you're not paying off the balance every month for your hydro, for your gas, for whatever, then that's a debt that you owe as well. And those have got to be priorities, because if you stop paying those things, they're going to turn off the services.
Yep. And particularly in the winter, heat is a thing we like here in Canada.
Yeah.
So we got the debt side of it, and then I guess you've already addressed this a bit, and that's the income side of it. So what are you looking for there?
So what forms of income do you have? How stable is it? How often does it come in? So are you paid weekly? Are you paid biweekly? Are you paid semi-monthly? Are you on government money, which means you get it the third last day of the month? What's the flow for your cash coming in? Because we're going to need to know that for the cash going out.
So if, in fact, it was going to take you 91 years to pay it off, then you're going to be paying like $97,000 in interest on your $20,000 credit card.
Wow.
Now, that's stupid, because you probably won't be alive in 97 years, or 91 years. But anyways.
Okay.
So that's – now, if it was a consolidation loan instead of these credit cards, and let's say, over 3 years, you're going to pay it off.
Yep.
What kind of numbers we would be looking at then?
Well, so pick an interest rate, let's say 9%. Your payment's going to be $635 a month.
So over the life of the 3 years, you're paying like $3,000 in interest.
Right.
That's a lot better than
and if there's not a big enough payment difference for you, then amortize it over 5 years, and that payment's going to drop, but your interest is going to go up.
Right. So why then, when you go into the bank and you say, hey, I got these 4 credit cards, and they're all, 20%, and I'd like to consolidate. So bank, I'd like you to give me a loan where the interest rate is 9%. Why would they do that?
Well, so I'm going to assume that one of those credit cards in your case study probably was from the bank you're trying to get the loan from. That means the other 3 aren't. Well, so they're not making any money on those debts. So by giving you a consolidation loan, they've now stolen all of that business from their competitors, and they're getting interest on the full $20,000 instead of probably they were getting $5,000 worth on the interest for the card you had with them.
So you're saying banks are in this to make money?
Well, they better be. I have, that stock in my retirement plan.
There you go. Okay, so that kind of makes sense, that even though they're going to lose a little bit of money on the interest rate they're charging you on the credit card you've got with them, they're taking work from other banks, so they're getting money. Okay, so this all sounds fantastic. You and I both agree, pay as much as you possibly can against the credit card, not just the minimum payments.
Right.
Visa and MasterCard or the banks love it when you're paying the minimums because they're getting the maximum interest. But that means you're paying the maximum interest.
Right. But the moment you stop paying, they're going to be calling you left and right. Even one missed payment, they're going to be calling you, whoever's number you have on your credit report. It
just keeps on going. Okay, so the solution is get a consolidation loan then. I've got credit cards at 20% interest. If I can borrow at 10% interest, I'm saving interest.
Yeah.
Any problem with that?
Well, so in most cases, by the time you get to the point where you need a consolidation loan, you probably won't qualify.
Well, consolidation loan, first of all, is really hard to get with the bank. For example, if you're going to go get an unsecured line of credit with the bank, it's not like before. It's much more strict. They look at your income stream. They look at your debt level and your credit score and things like that. Oftentimes, if you're going to go get a consolidation loan or a line of credit, your credit score is not that great, or you already have really high debt ratio. So you're not a great candidate. Okay. But the consolidation loan will provide a lower interest, but not everyone qualifies.
I mean, the banks want to get that extra business. They want to lend you money if they're confident you can pay them back. But if you've got a bunch of credit card debt and any kind of delinquencies, so you've been missing payments, they go, well, wait a minute. I'm not sure that you have the right ratios for us to give you this 9% loan. Maybe we'll give it to you at 15%. So it's not such a great deal. Or maybe you got to get a co-signer, somebody to help you with the security on the loan.
And so that's what will increase my chances of getting the loan then.
That's right.
A co-signer. What else? What else can I do to convince the bank to give me this loan?
If you have some sort of collateral. So, I mean, the most common one is if you need a consolidation loan is they'll say, well, we're happy to give you a second mortgage on your house. And so now you've taken these credit cards that if you default on, somebody has to sue you. And you've said, well, I'll get a much lower interest rate, but if I don't pay the bills, they're going to come take my house from me.
So you're talking about a HELOC there.
HELOC is one possibility, or simply a second mortgage.
And it could be because of their money script. Everyone has a money script in their head. So I think it's important. Like, you can delve into the money script and figure that all out. There's some great books on that. The one gentleman's name is escaping me. I'll try to remember, or we'll post it later. But if you don't want to do all of like that kind of work, then just set up a simple system that puts $20 aside a week or $40 every paycheck, that just shunts it aside, puts it into savings, and then it's just there and you don't think about it. And then that creates the habit of just making sure that, you live your budget less because you reduce your expenses because you've already set it aside. I think that's really important to do, because a lot of us could probably shave a couple $100 out of our budget, or off of our income, and still live a pretty okay life. Does that?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's the habit of getting money aside that's really important.
And that's certainly true for people who work in construction, who maybe get a lot less income in the winter than they get in the summer. There's a lot of jobs that are seasonal. There's lots of people, if you're a flight attendant for Air Canada, you get a check that's always the same number on the 1st of the month. And then on the 15th of the month, your check is based on your hours and adjustments and per diems and all the rest of it. So
crazy.
Really hard to budget when I don't exactly know what exactly my paycheck is going to be. So, okay, so we've got the debt side of it, the income side of it. And then the obvious question then is, okay, so of that income, how much is going towards debt?
Right.
Getting a consolidation loan does not reduce your debt.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about even getting a consolidation loan won't help you, because what normally 99% of the time what happens is you have credit cards that are available now at zero balance. Instead of cutting them up like that a wise person would do, what we would do is rack up more debt and pay the consolidation loan. So all of a sudden we have multiple places that we owe money where our primary goal was to just consolidate and pay one lender. Well, that's not the case anymore. Now you have many.
That's right. I've got $10,000 owing on my credit cards. I managed to qualify for a $10,000 debt consolidation loan, unless the bank either makes me cut up those credit cards or I do it myself, and not just cut them up, but actually phone the bank and cancel them.
Right.
Well, now I've got access to $20,000 worth of debt.
Exactly. Does that help? No.
That's the biggest problem. I mean, that's why we're calling this episode the Never Never Plan. You end up just continuing. You never get out of debt.
Well, you double down. That's what most people end up doing.
So the bank doesn't want you to get out of debt.
No, it's not in the bank's interest. The bank's interest, I shouldn't be using that word. The bank is biased towards making sure you carry as much debt as you can afford to repay, and not $1 less.
There you go. Because that's how they maximize their profits.
That's right.
Okay, let's talk practical advice here before your voice is completely shot. And, we have to end the show. So do you agree that at the very least, you should have your credit card set up on autopay so that, on the due date, it automatically gets paid? Or do you believe in some other kind of system?
No, I'm similar to you. I get paid on the 15th and the end of the month. I make sure my credit cards are paid on the 15th and the end of the month. The money comes in, I make sure things get dealt with.
That's when I get paid too.
Right. Amazing.
I think that's because we both work for the same company.
Don't I sign your check?
I believe so. No, it's all electronic now. There's no cash anymore. Okay, so what advice do you give someone who is contemplating getting a consolidation loan? What are the things that pop into your head?
Well, so keep in mind, there's no such thing as having a bank as your friend. Banks are not your friends. Banks are in business to make money. And so if they're going to approve you for this consolidation loan, it's because they think they can make money off the transaction. It's as simple as that.
And what you just described, they want, you said, to get you to borrow as much as you can borrow, but not a penny more.
And they want you to borrow it all from them.
So they want you in the Goldilocks zone, right? It's not too hot, not too cold, just right.
Yeah.
What is your advice to someone in that situation who doesn't want to look at anything, doesn't want to see anything, they're too anxious? What do you tell them?
Well, I could personally relate. Not that I've had serious debt problems, but I could have a spending spree when I was in my younger 20s and avoid the statement like the plague. Okay, I would be like, oh my gosh, I don't want to know because I don't want to face reality. But that only created problems for me because I would miss deadlines. I would miss what my minimum payments would be. So I would miss that budgeting. I would miscalculate how much I would owe the bank. So that's not good because that's going to ruin your credit score and such. So yeah, you do have to keep up to date with your statements. You do have to understand like how much interest you're paying, how much principal is going down, or else you're going to go into that cyclical, like vicious cycle that we were mentioning.
So you got to tackle it head on.
You do. You can't avoid it. You can avoid it for a couple of weeks, but no.
So to review, why you should have an emergency fund and build the emergency fund before paying off debt, you said, well, you get into the savings habit, which is something you want to do for the rest of your life. It also gives you confidence, was the word you used, that, okay, I know I can do it. I've got money there for the future. The second reason is if I pay down my debt, then I'm taking a bit of a risk because the lender may end up canceling it. They may say, oh, you got this line of credit for $50,000, but you never use it, so we're just going to cancel it and you don't have a line of credit anymore. Or they could reduce your authorized limit. Okay, your credit card, instead of being $20,000, now it's only $5,000. So you don't actually have access to it in the future. And then I guess the other point you had made that, well, if you're paying down debt and then you use the debt to function, you're not really paying down debt. You're just, trading dollars. So those all make sense to me. Now, my counter argument to all of that, why you should pay off debt, and you already mentioned this, the obvious answer is interest. If you're paying interest on your debt, and that's how debt works. I don't know of any debt that has zero interest. I mean, I don't know, maybe you got a car loan 5 years ago where it was zero interest, but in the vast majority of cases, you're paying interest. And I am of the view that the higher the interest rate, the more important it is to be paying it down. So if you have a payday loan, then absolutely pay that off. Don't be putting money in an emergency fund because you're paying 390% interest. And if you got a high interest credit card at 29%, again, seems to me a no-brainer to be paying that off first. Do you agree or disagree with that? And my question very specifically is, if we're talking about really high interest debt, should that not be the priority over an emergency fund?
Yeah, that's a tough one because I still like to have the $1,000 set aside because then it makes it easier. Pay the minimums, get the 1,000, and then aggressively attack the 29% interest rate. The other thing you can do with a high interest rate credit card is to say, you know what, bank, I can't afford this. Can you convert this to a loan? It hurts your credit score a bit, but you can reduce the interest rate at least, but you lose the credit card. But that's not a problem. You can reestablish later on. But yeah, it is really important to get high interest loans paid down.
Okay. So you're saying do whatever you can not to use credit to survive, and you're not alone.
Exactly. You're not alone. Definitely not.
And that's pretty much it. Okay, excellent. Well, that's, I think, some very good practical advice. And I want to emphasize that as well, that you're not alone. A lot of people in the same boat. And there is no magic solution. I know on the internet, everyone's got a magic solution. There isn't. It comes down to math, cash in, cash out.
Does it balance? And what can I do to make it so? And if the reason for a big shortfall is debt, well, okay, that's something we can work with you on. But in a lot of cases, we do say to people, you know what? You're going to have to make some changes. Bottom line is, when you are considering consolidating, I'm a big believer in talking to an expert.
Yep.
Obviously, the bank wants to sell you what they want to sell you, so fine, talk to them. That's cool. But I think if you also talk to a licensed insolvency trustee, we can say, well, here's what a proposal would look like.
Look at all your options. If you're going out for a car, you wouldn't just buy the first one you saw.
I do, actually. But 12 years ago when I bought a car, that's exactly what I did. But yes, I get your point. You should do a little research, do a little shopping around. And you want to understand the pros and cons of each. Right. So a lot of people who come into us, we say, no, you don't need to file a proposal. Right. That's not the right option. You should be doing this or that. But for a number of people, that's the correct option. Great. Then that's what you should do.
Correct. Not only are we legally required to, it's the right answer. Because if we give you the right answer to solve your problem, when somebody tells you they're in trouble, they'll say, well, you should call Doug and Ted. Yeah. When I go to a doctor, I want the doctor to say, well, you could do physio, you could have surgery, you could take this medication. Give me the options. What's the pros and cons? Right. And then we can help work it out. And that's why a significant number of the people who end up contacting us end up doing a consumer proposal, which looks like a debt consolidation because you're making a payment every month, but it isn't,
because you're paying less than the full amount owing.
Yeah, and there's no interest on the debt.
And obviously, it's something the people you owe money to have to agree to.
Right.
And so we will help you figure out what do we offer that's good enough that they will say yes, but that you can still afford. And for people who can't do it on their own, that is the ultimate solution for tackling debt.
Correct.
So there you go. Thanks for watching. Smash that like button, hit the subscribe, and don't forget to click that bell for new show notifications. Until next time, I'm Doug Hoyes. That was Debt Free in 30.